In the quiet of morning, you glance into the mirror as you always do. But what if I told you that small mole, the one you've barely noticed all these years, could change everything? What if it is not just a dot, but a secret code? A hidden key placed upon your skin by forces greater than you can imagine. A sign of endless wealth, or, if misunderstood, a silent thief of fortune that drains your blessings little by little, without you even realizing. In ancient traditions, a mole was never a mistake of nature. It was a message. Some moles are sacred marks, the universe's way of carving fortune onto your body. Others, though small and dark, are warnings, a closed door. A mirror cracked at the edges, distorting your path, keeping abundance just out of reach. So today, look again. That mole on your neck, your brow, your hand, is it your hidden treasure? Or is it quietly steering you away from the life of peace and prosperity you deserve? Do you dare to see what has been waiting all along on your own skin? Number 1, the mole on the right side of the neck, the silent gateway of fortune. You've probably looked at your neck 1,000 times, adjusted a necklace, felt the warmth of a scarf, smoothed your collar in the mirror. But have you ever truly seen it? That small, quiet mole resting on the right side, hidden in plain sight. What if that mole is not just a dark speck upon your skin? What if it is a gateway? A sacred bridge between thought and action, between the invisible and the real, between dreams and the life you're meant to live. In ancient wisdom, the neck is more than bone and muscle. It is the path where the mind's intentions flow into the world. The right side of the neck, in particular, is the channel where good fortune, clarity, and strength pass freely. And when a mole appears here, it is as if the universe has left its signature upon you, marking you as someone chosen to carry a quiet, enduring fortune. These are not the flashy riches that come in waves and leave as quickly as they arrive. No, this is the kind of wealth that builds gently over time, like water filling a well drop by drop. A mole on the right side of the neck speaks of a person whose life becomes richer with age. Someone who rarely faces sudden downfall. Someone who attracts helpers, supporters, mentors without even asking, simply because their energy draws goodness. Picture it, a woman who never boasts, yet her home is warm, her table always has enough, and her children flourish under her steady love. A man who does not chase fortune, yet fortune seems to follow him, quietly weaving its way into his life. This is the blessing of the right side neck mole. But beware, its power depends on how you live. This mark is a promise, yes, but a conditional one. Those who wear it must walk humbly. The universe grants its gifts here only to those who do not flaunt them, to those who share their wealth when the moment is right, to those who protect, not hoard, who give, not just gather. You may wonder, how can a small mole carry so much meaning? Because the neck is the sacred highway between heart and action, and the right side is where energy flows outward, where what lives inside you shapes the world around you. A mole here is like a spiritual amulet carved directly upon your body. Across cultures, this area has always been treated with reverence. Think of prayer beads draped gently around the neck. Think of protective talismans resting against the skin, guarding the spirit. The mole on the right side belongs to this same sacred tradition. It is a natural charm, a seal of quiet luck, ancestral blessing, and cosmic alignment. But just as this mole brings fortune when honored, it can bring hardship when neglected. Living selfishly, showing off, or misusing the gifts life gives you, these acts can dull the light of this mole's blessing. And worse, if you mistake this mole's presence as permission for arrogance, you risk turning fortune's gentle flow into stagnation. And what of the left side? Here lies the caution. A mole on the left side of the neck is seen as a sign of blocked energy, of struggles that repeat, of words twisted, trust betrayed, fortune slipping through the cracks. It is a reminder that not all marks are gifts, some are lessons. And that wisdom begins in knowing the difference. So what can you do if you carry this sacred mark on the right side of your neck? How can you honor it and let its promise unfold fully? Sparkles each morning as light touches your skin. Place your hand gently upon this spot. Close your eyes. Breathe in slowly. Feel the breath pass from your mind to your heart, from your heart to your hands. Whisper within. May my actions today bring kindness. May my words bring peace. May my gifts flow to where they are needed. In doing so, you awaken the energy of the mole. You open the gate wider. And in time, the blessings it guards will not only fill your life, but overflow, touching your children, your grandchildren, and all who walk beside you. Look again at your neck. What seemed small may, in truth, be the doorway to a wealth deeper than gold. Number 2, the mole on the crown of the head, heaven's hidden seal. There is a place on your body you rarely see. The crown of your head, that quiet peak where your hair parts, where the breeze brushes gently without you noticing. It is the point closest to the sky. The spot where, if you stood beneath the open heavens, the universe itself would touch you first. And what if, hidden beneath your hair, right at this sacred point, lies a mole? A small, dark mark you may never have seen, but which has always been there like a seal pressed upon you by unseen hands. A mark that says, "This one carries the fortune of the heavens." In ancient belief, a mole on the crown is not just a coincidence of nature. It is the universe's way of leaving its signature, a sacred sign granted to few, a hidden code of destiny placed where no eye easily sees, as if to remind you that true blessings do not need to shout. They do not crave attention, they simply are. Those blessed with this mole are often protected in ways they may not even realize. Life's storms pass, but they stand unharmed. When they stumble, unseen hands seem to lift them again. When they face dark nights, dawn always breaks a little sooner for them. But here, the wonder many who bear this sacred mark don't even know it. It lies hidden beneath the hair, out of sight, quiet as the stars at dawn. And so, for much of life, its power rests, waiting. Then, often in midlife, something stirs. A chance appears, a door opens, fortune shifts, and what seems like luck is, in truth, the quiet awakening of this mole's blessing. The crown of the head is where heaven's energy flows into the body. In meditation, it is known as the heaven's gate, the point where we receive light, wisdom, and strength from the cosmos. A mole here is like a natural talisman drawn by the universe itself. Those with this mole often carry an inner light. Their presence soothes. Their words carry weight, though they may speak little. They may rise slowly in life, but when they do, their steps are sure. They build not castles of sand, but homes of stone, foundations that last, not just for themselves, but for those who come after. Yet, like all great gifts, this mole carries a test. The higher you stand, the stronger the winds. Fortune given by heaven is fortune that must be honored. Those who become proud, who forget compassion, who think the blessing is theirs alone, they risk losing the very gifts they were given. For the universe grants, but it also watches. So how can you honor this hidden seal if you are among the few who carry it? Sparkles each morning, or whenever you feel the sun's warmth on your head, pause, close your eyes. Imagine light streaming through your crown, filling your body with calm and strength. Whisper within, "May I walk gently upon this earth. May I use what is given to me to lift others. May I remain humble beneath the sky." In doing this, you awaken the energy of your sacred mole. You align yourself with the quiet current of blessings meant for you. And in time, you will see your life becomes a lantern, not just lighting your own path, but guiding those who follow. The crown of your head, the place you rarely see, may well be the point where heaven itself reached down and left its mark upon you. Number 3, the mole between the eyebrows, the gateway of destiny. There is a place on your face that everyone sees, but few truly notice. The space between your eyebrows, where your gaze rests before it meets the world. In ancient wisdom, this is more than just skin. This is the gateway of destiny, the seat of vision, the compass that points the way when life's path splits in two. And what if, resting quietly at this sacred spot, lies a mole? A mark that is not a flaw, not a blemish, but a sign. A key. A reminder from the universe that you were born to walk with clarity, to choose with wisdom, to lead your life with purpose. In face reading, this area is called the Hall of Clarity or the Command Palace. It is where your mind's light shines out to meet the world. A mole here is never random. It is a seal placed by unseen hands, a promise that you have been given the gift of foresight. The ability to see beyond the surface, to recognize truth when others are lost in illusion. Those blessed with this mole often rise early in their careers. They find the right path, the right partners, the right moments, as if guided by an invisible hand. Decisions that change the course of life come to them not with struggle, but with a quiet knowing. They step forward when the time is right and doors open. They pause when danger lies ahead and storms pass them by. But this mole's power, like all true power, is fragile. It is a gift that must be honored. The mole between the eyebrows grants vision, but vision clouded by arrogance, by selfishness, by haste, can lead not to triumph, but to ruin. Those who carry this mark are tested again and again. Will you use your insight for good? Will you lead with integrity? Will you choose the path that serves not just yourself, but all who walk with you? Beware, too, the temptation to erase this mark. In modern times, many see it as an imperfection, something to remove for beauty's sake. But ancient wisdom warns, the mole between the eyebrows is not just skin deep, it anchors energy. It steadies your inner compass. Remove it without understanding and you risk losing your way. Careers stumble. Relationships falter. A life once clear becomes a maze. So how can you honor this sacred gateway if you are among those who carry its mark? Sparkles each morning stand before a clean mirror. Let your gaze soften. Look gently at the space between your brows. Breathe slowly and within whisper, "May my choices today be wise, may my heart be steady, may my steps be true." This small act aligns you with the gift your mole offers. It sharpens your inner vision. It keeps the path clear, even when the world around you is clouded. The space between your eyebrows is not empty. It is where destiny stands waiting, watching, ready to guide you, if only you choose to see. Number 4, the mole on the right hand, the mark of action that gathers fortune. Look at your right hand, the hand that reaches out, the hand that builds, protects, gives, the hand that shapes the world around you with every choice, every gesture, every labor of love. Now imagine this. Upon that hand, whether on the palm, the back, or near the wrist, rests a mole. A tiny mark that is anything but insignificant. A silent reminder that fortune does not come only to those who wait, but to those who act, who dare, who give, who create. In ancient wisdom, the right hand is the hand of righteous action. The hand that turns intention into reality. A mole here is like a cosmic stamp, pressed into your skin as if the universe itself chose you to carry out good deeds, to transform effort into blessing. Those blessed with this mole are rarely idle. They do not wait for fortune to find them. They go out and meet it. They are the ones who see opportunity where others see obstacles. The ones who work with quiet strength, whose efforts ripple outwards, touching lives, building legacies. Their wealth does not fall from the sky, it grows from the seeds they plant with these very hands. Picture the farmer sowing seeds in early dawn, trusting the earth to return the gift. The mother braiding her child's hair, each touch filled with care. The craftsman shaping wood, stone, or clay, leaving behind something useful, something beautiful. The right hand with a sacred mole is blessed in the same way. It creates, and creation brings abundance. But as with all marks of power, this mole is a call to responsibility. It promises that the more you do with integrity, the more blessings will flow. But if you use your hand for harm, for greed, deceit, cruelty, the flow of fortune dries up. The same hand that builds can also destroy. The universe watches how you use this gift. And know this, the energy of this mole grows stronger with age. In youth, it brings chances to learn, to shape character. In maturity, it gathers the fruits of those efforts. And in old age, it becomes a wellspring of stability, not just for you, but for those who come after you. So how do you honor the mole on your right hand? How do you keep its promise alive? Sparkles each morning, place your right hand over your heart. Feel its warmth. Breathe deeply and whisper within, "May my hands today do good. May my work bring peace. May my touch heal, not harm." And as you move through your day, remember every act matters. Every gesture, no matter how small, is a thread in the fabric of your fortune. Look again at your hand. The mole resting there is not just a mark. It is a seed, a promise. A reminder that the life you dream of is shaped, not by chance, but by what these hands choose to do. Number 5, the mole behind the ear, the silent keeper of ancestral blessings. There is a place just behind your ear, a quiet curve where the world's noise fades, where whispers of the past seem to linger. A place few notice, yet where energy flows softly, carrying with it the voice of those who came before you. And what if, resting in this hidden spot, lies a mole? A small mark, easy to forget, easy to miss. But in truth, a sacred sign, a seal of quiet strength, a reminder that you are not alone, that unseen hands, the love of generations, walk with you still. In the wisdom of old traditions, the area behind the ear is more than flesh. It is where wisdom gathers in silence, where the lessons of the ancestors settle, waiting to guide those who will listen. A mole here is not loud, not bold. It does not shout its presence. Instead, it hums quietly, like the low song of the wind through ancient trees. Those blessed with this mole are marked by inherited fortune, not always in gold or land, but in strength of spirit, clarity of mind, and steadiness of heart. They are often the ones who, even as children, seem older than their years. The ones who listen more than they speak, who observe before they act. And as they grow, this blessing deepens. They become the calm center in storms, the steady hand in chaos, the trusted voice when confusion reigns. Their wealth may not come in bursts, but it grows slowly, securely, like roots spreading deep into the earth, holding strong against the winds of time. This mole also speaks of family, of lineage, of duty. It marks those who are called to honor their roots, to uphold the values passed down, to protect the good name of their ancestors. And in doing so, they ensure that their descendants, too, will walk in light. But this gift, like all true gifts, comes with a choice: to honor it or to waste it, to live with care or with carelessness, to listen for the quiet wisdom that surrounds you, or to drown it out in the noise of ego and haste. Those who honor this mole, who act with discretion, who protect what matters, who choose patience over impulse, find that fortune follows them quietly. They manage their wealth well. They build homes filled with peace. They leave behind legacies of respect and love. So how can you awaken the blessing of the mole behind your ear? Sparkles in moments of stillness, close your eyes. Turn your face gently toward the breeze. Let the wind touch this hidden spot, and in your heart whisper, "May I honor the wisdom that guides me. May I protect what was given to me. May I be worthy of the blessings of those who came before." When you do this, you do more than honor a mole. You honor the invisible thread that ties you to the past, anchors you in the... Behind your ear, where the world grows quiet, lies a mark that holds not just your fortune, but the strength of all who have ever loved you. Number 6, the mole on the upper arm near the elbow, the quiet strength that lifts destiny. There is a part of your body that moves without fanfare, that works without needing praise, your upper arm near the elbow. The place where intention bends into action, where resolve gathers before it reaches the hand. And if upon this place rests a mole, know this: it is no accident. It is a sign, a quiet mark that tells of hidden strength, of determination that does not waver, of a heart that, though it may not boast, lifts more than its share and does so with grace. In ancient traditions, this part of the arm is where energy of perseverance gathers. A mole here is like the universe placing a small, invisible weight upon you, not as a burden, but as a reminder. You were born to carry, to build, to endure. Those blessed with this mole often walk the path of steady effort. They are not the ones who seek applause or chase after fleeting glory. Instead, they set their sights quietly on what matters, and then they work, day after day, year after year, with patience, with resolve, with hands that do not give up when the task is hard, and with a spirit that grows stronger with every challenge overcome. Think of the bamboo, slender, quiet, bending in the storm but never breaking, or the mountain path, winding, difficult, but leading always upward. The mole near the elbow speaks of this same strength, a strength that may go unnoticed at first, but that over time builds lives, families, and fortunes that endure. Those with this mark are often trusted with great responsibilities. In families, they are the quiet protectors. In work, the dependable pillars. They may not be the loudest voice, but when they speak, others listen. They may not rush ahead, but when they arrive, they do so with purpose and certainty. But as with all sacred signs, this mole's promise comes with a choice. Will you use your strength to lift others, or only yourself? Will you build with care or with haste? Will you honor the quiet power within you, or waste it in restless seeking? The mole on the upper arm near the elbow calls you to steady action, to persistence that is noble, to effort that uplifts rather than exhausts. So how do you honor this mark? Sparkles each morning, or in a quiet moment, place your hand gently on your upper arm. Feel its warmth, its strength. Breathe deeply, and within whisper, "May my strength today serve what is good. May my actions be steady and true. May I carry my tasks with grace." And as you move through your day, remember, every effort counts. Every task done with care, every responsibility embraced with heart. These are the bricks with which fortune builds its home. Look again at your arm. The mole resting there is not just a mark. It is a reminder that within you lives the strength to shape your destiny, quietly, surely, day by day. Number 7, the mole on the cheekbone, the mark of power, the test of the soul. The cheekbone rises high on your face, a bridge between your eyes and your words, between what you see and what you say. It is where energy gathers, where the world reads the strength you carry before you even speak. And if upon this place rests a mole, it is not there by chance. It is a signal, a stamp of destiny, a sign that you were born to carry influence, but also to bear the weight of choice. In ancient wisdom, the cheekbone is the palace of authority. A mole here tells of someone who does not merely walk with the crowd, but who shapes the path for others. someone whose voice can guide, whose presence commands attention, whose decisions ripple far beyond their own life. Those blessed with this mole often find themselves drawn into roles of leadership. They are the ones others look to when the way is unclear, the ones asked to take the first step to make the hard call to carry the hopes of many. But here lies the truth: power is never without test. The mole on the cheekbone is both a gift and a question. Will you use your strength to lift or to dominate, to guide with wisdom or to control with fear, to build harmony or to feed the hunger of the ego? For this mole does not only attract respect, it draws envy too. It shines a light that brings admirers and those who would see you stumble. And so, the one who bears this mark must walk carefully. Every choice, every word, every action becomes part of a legacy that shapes not just their fortune, but the lives of those around them. This mole asks, can you lead without pride? Can you stand tall without needing to be seen? Can you hold power gently as a tool for good rather than as a weapon for self? And know this: when honored, the mole on the cheekbone brings more than status. It brings deep, lasting wealth, the wealth of trust, the wealth of loyalty, the wealth of a name spoken with respect long after you are gone. But if misused, if turned toward selfish ends, it can become a source of downfall. For power gained without virtue crumbles. Influence sought for self alone breeds isolation. So how do you honor this mole and the gift it brings? Sparkles each day when you see your reflection. Pause. Look at your cheekbone not as a feature of the face, but as a reminder of your power. Breathe deeply and whisper within, may my strength today serve what is right. May my influence bring light, not shadow. May I lead with humility and care. In this way, you awaken the blessing of the mole. You remind yourself that true power does not seek applause, it seeks to serve. And in that service, fortune flows. Look again at your cheekbone. The mole resting there is not just a mark. It is the universe asking, what will you do with the strength I have given you? Number 8, the mole on the nose or nostrils, the keeper of wealth's flow. Look at your nose, at its quiet strength in the center of your face. The bridge between breath and life, between what you take in and what you give out. This is the palace of wealth, the keeper of fortune's flow. And if upon this sacred space rests a mole, whether on the bridge, the tip, or beside the nostrils, know that it speaks. It speaks of money's dance in your life, of how wealth comes, how it stays, or how it slips silently away. In ancient wisdom, the nose is not just a feature. It is the vault where your fortune gathers. A mole here is not random. It is a sign carved into your skin by the unseen, marking you as one who holds the power to attract abundance, or the burden to guard against loss. Those blessed with a mole on the nose often have a natural sense for opportunity. They seem to smell the right moment. They spot the hidden path when others see only walls. Their hands are skilled at managing what they gain, setting aside, investing wisely, building steadily. But the nose, like wealth itself, demands balance. A mole on the left nostril, round and well-formed, speaks of stored fortune, of someone who builds wealth patiently, who saves, who creates security that lasts. A mole on the right nostril, clear and bright, signals dynamic energy, the ability to generate income, to adapt, to seize the moment. Yet this gift is not without its test. A mole on the nose asks, will you respect wealth or will you let it rule you? Will you see money as a tool for good or as a prize that blinds the heart? For those who misuse the gift, who chase wealth without honor, who let greed cloud their way, the blessing of the mole fades. Money flows in but flows out faster. The vault cracks. Beware, too, of moles that sit dark and irregular, especially on the bridge of the nose. These may warn of unstable fortune, of gains followed by losses, of promises that vanish. And never rush to erase a mole here for the sake of appearance. The nose is the vault of wealth energy. Remove its mark thoughtlessly, and you may disturb the flow that sustains you. So how can you honor this sacred keeper of fortune? Sparkles each morning as you take your first deep breath, feel the air pass through your nose. Let it remind you, wealth like breath must flow, steady, mindful, balanced. Whisper within, may I use what I am given with care. May I grow what I receive with wisdom. May my fortune serve not just myself, but those I love. In doing so, you align your fortune with your heart. You open the vault not just to wealth, but to peace. Look again at your nose. The mole resting there is not just a mark. It is the key to how wealth moves through your life. How will you turn that key today? Number 9, the mole on the chin, the foundation of lasting fortune. Your chin, the quiet anchor of your face, the part that bears the weight of your words, the silent strength that shapes your profile. In ancient wisdom, the chin is more than bone and skin. It is the symbol of stability, the base upon which the fortune of your later years rests. And if upon this foundation rests a mole, small, dark, steady, know this. It is a sign. A quiet promise that, if honored, brings wealth that does not waver, a home that does not fall, a legacy that endures. A mole on the chin tells of someone whose blessings gather slowly but surely, like a tree that takes root deep beneath the earth before it reaches for the sky. This is not the fortune of sudden windfalls, but of careful building, of saving, of planning, of choosing well step by step, year by year. Those blessed with this mole often find that their greatest prosperity comes later in life. Not because they lacked fortune in youth, but because they understood that true wealth is not just what you earn, but what you keep. Not just what you own, but what you protect and pass on. The chin, in ancient belief, is where earth's breath meets the warmth of the heart. A mole here is like a small seal placed by destiny itself. A sign that, with care, you will build a life that rests upon solid ground. A life where family, home, and peace flourish. But as always, this blessing comes with choice. The mole on the chin calls you to patience, to responsibility, to humility, to see fortune not as something to grasp at wildly, but as something to nurture, like a garden that feeds not only you, but those you love. Beware the temptation to rush, to gamble, to chase fleeting gains. For the mole on the chin promises fortune only to those who build upon firm soil. And know this, not every mole on the chin is a sign of blessing. A mole that is dark, irregular, or drooping toward the mouth may warn of loose fortune, of words that undo what hands have built, of wealth that slips away through carelessness. And do not be too quick to erase or hide this mole for beauty's sake. The chin is the foundation of fortune's palace. To remove its mark without understanding is to weaken the ground beneath your own feet. So how can you honor this sacred foundation? Sparkles each day as you prepare to face the world. Let your hand rest for a moment upon your chin. Feel its strength. Breathe deeply and whisper within, may I build today with care. May I protect what I have planted. May my fortune grow not only for me, but for those who come after. In doing so, you awaken the quiet blessing of this mole. You remind yourself that true wealth is not only measured in gold, but in peace, in shelter, in family gathered safely beneath one roof. Look again at your chin. The mole resting there is not just a mark. It is the universe asking, will you build a fortune that lasts? Now, as you stand once more before the mirror in the quiet of early morning or beneath the hush of evening light, let your gaze soften. Let your breath slow. Look not at your reflection as the world does, seeking flaws or perfections. Look deeper. Upon your skin, scattered like stars across a night sky, rest these small, silent marks. Moles that perhaps for years you dismissed as nothing. But what if they were never nothing? What if all along they were gentle signposts? A hidden map drawn softly upon you by hands unseen, showing you where strength lives, where blessings flow, where lessons wait. Each mark carries its own whisper. The mole near your neck calling you to act with humility. The one at your brow urging clarity and purpose. The one upon your hand reminding you that what you do shapes what you become. The one behind your ear, a quiet echo of ancestors who still walk beside you. No two maps are the same. No two journeys unfold alike. But every mole asks the same question. Will you listen? Will you see beyond the surface? Will you honor the gifts and the responsibilities these marks offer? And so, as you turn from the mirror, as you step into your day or into your rest, let this thought remain with you, simple, soft, but profound. The marks upon your skin are not random. They are part of the story you were born to live. The only question is, will you walk that story with open eyes, an open heart, and the quiet courage to honor what has always been written there?